Hey, thank you for tuning into this video. In this particular one, we're going to go over the Tower of Babel and draw the connection between the vision that Daniel interpreted that has something to do with this image. Keep watching. Okay, thank you for tuning in. All right, so if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. What I go over in my content, of course, is esoteric and exoteric research in retrospect to how it influences you. And I like to encourage you that if you're on a more pious path, that will help you in your soul journey, okay? So in this particular video, we're gonna be going over the Tower of Babel. We're going to draw the connection with the vision, of course, that Daniel interpreted in terms of this image that was like a head of gold, and it had various different levels associated with it, okay? All right, so the very first thing that I want to get into with you is to explain these garments. Remember, it said that Nimrod became a mighty hunter on the earth, right? So there was these garments that he had. So if we rewind a little bit, there was a story about Ham and how Ham basically stole garments from he saw his father's nakedness. He saw Noah's nakedness, right? So what actually happened in that event, of course, is Ham actually stole the garments that was originally given to Adam and Eve, those coats of skin that was originally given to them, and he hid them. Okay, so you can get this information in the book of Jasher, and I'll leave all resources underneath the like button so you can seek out this information on your own. But what actually happened was Enoch actually had those garments, and then Enoch actually gave them to Methuselah, his son. And then when Noah went onto the ark, of course, he took those same garments because Methuselah left the body and everything, so he took those garments on the ark. So then, of course, he was in his tent. And then you know the story about Ham, seeing his father's nakedness, and how the curse actually went to Canaan in regard to that, of course, but it didn't necessarily expound on what actually happened. So when it's saying Ham saw his father's nakedness, basically what it's saying is that those garments was taken from Noah, so to speak, okay? So then, of course, Ham had those garments, and he actually gave them to Cush. And Cush had those garments, and then he actually gave them to Nimrod. And when Nimrod put those garments on, he became a mighty hunter on the earth. Now, Nimrod originally was following after the ways of the higher regions of righteousness. It wasn't until he became very mighty in war that he decided, he got kind of pumped up and everything according to what's written. And I'll leave the resources here so you can look it up. But basically what ended up happening is he actually went away from his original knowledge that he had, and then he became more disagreeable, even more so than the days of Noah. And then he had a child who actually ended up becoming more disagreeable than Nimrod. So then what we have happen, of course, is we had a situation where there was a building of a tower. Now the way it's being taught and promulgated is that they were building a physical structure. But in this particular video, we want to kind of go into some resources where I want to give you a more of a Kabbalistic viewpoint on how to look at that tower, and how possibly what we're talking about is a hierarchy of information. Language is something that it was spoken about, saying that all the languages were confounded and everything like that. But what it appears, if you would look deeper beneath the dermis, of course, is that what we're talking about that happened is basically we had a confusion of information, and it caused everyone to just spread out. And that's kind of how information happens. So if we look at like religions, of course, that's a language. So if you have people who are observing any one of the alphabet religions, you'll notice that they all speak the same language. So that is a form of language, if you get what I'm saying. So let's actually go and read the account here where it spoke about this Babel. This is chapter 9, and I'm going to fast forward a little bit to help explain what I mean here. All right, so this is what it basically says, right? So it says, and when they were building They built themselves a great city and a very high and strong tower, and on account of its height, the mortar and bricks did not reach the builders in their ascent to it. Okay, so we're dealing with masonry here. So then it says, until those who went up had completed a full year, and after that they reached to the builders and gave them the mortar and the bricks. Thus was it done daily. And behold, these ascended and others descended the whole day. And if a brick should fall from their hands and get broken, they would all weep over it. And if a man fell and died, none of them would look at him. And the Lord knew their thoughts. And it came to pass, when they were building, they cast the arrows toward the heavens. Okay, so like even in the book of Psalms, how it talks about you will not be like afraid of the arrow that flieth by day. Let's go into the Pistis Sophia. And what I'm going to show is that we're not talking about actual arrows. And there's many interpretations when people see that. You've heard people talk about nuclear destruction in terms of arrows that fly by day and so forth. But when you're looking at it from a very, mundane, very surface level, and that's really the goal behind the civilization of deception, is to kind of keep you in low levels of ignorance. So whenever you come in contact with information, you are only able to perceive it based on your senses of the program that has been given to you. So what I want to introduce to you in this video, using the Pistis Sophia, is that when we're talking about these arrows here, I'm going to go over here to book 2. Let's see here, the second book, and we're going to look at, I think it's chapter, let's see here, I think it's chapter 67. All right, and I'll leave all the resources underneath the like button for you. So this is what it says. It says, and the word which thy power hath spoken, he will not be afraid of an arrow which flieth by day. That is, Pistis Sophia had not been afraid of the power which self-willed had sent last of all out of the height, and which had come into the chaos as it were a flying arrow. So I have an illustration here that I want to show you where it talks about how emotions basically have an action and they have a movement, and it's similar to an arrow flying. So if you are formulating certain types of thoughts trying to attack someone, and if they are very dense, then it can penetrate. If they are in matter, then it can actually penetrate them like an arrow flying. That's the reason why you want to build yourself up by doing the appropriate stuff from within, so you don't be affected by this. So here in the book of Joshua, where it's talking about this Tower of Babel, how it says they cast their arrows toward the heavens. You see what I'm saying? It says, and all the arrows fell upon them filled with blood. And when they saw them, they said to each other, surely we have slain all those that are in heaven. Okay? That are in heaven. So what we're dealing with here, of course, is when you're building with information, and typically at the very top of whatever it is that you're building, you might have the founders of that information or whatever the case may be. Don't forget that it said that Nimrod built something wood and stone. So wood and stone is synonymous with iron, typically with oppression, and iron is synonymous with the material world. So when you're building something wood and stone, that means that you're basically formulating some form of an idea that's surrounded around the material planes of existence. That's wood and stone. Even in the law, it talks about how you would serve gods that neither your fathers have known, even wood and stone. So you have most that are basically following after the clay, which is the body, and all of the enjoyments of the material planes. So that's why it says wherever you store thy treasures, there will your heart be also. So the wood and stone that Nimrod was setting up was basically a physical material style structure for everyone to follow after. So they had all one language. So they were all following after this idea that was being created, and then there was hierarchies of that knowledge. So for example, you'll have the uninitiated, typically a population that are at the bottom of that information or of that knowledge or of that language. So you'll set up maybe holidays for them to observe and various different things like that. And that would be the uninitiated population. So that would be at the bottom of your structure or of your image. So that's the clay, if you get what I'm saying. So then you have the iron, which is the material world, and then you have those that are above that, say like the brass or the silver, and then you have the head of gold, and typically up there is where you have those who are actually at the head of that information, if you get what I'm saying. So that is the Tower of Babel that we have here being built, and based upon the divisions of those that were interested in creating this kind of knowledge, there was something that it says the Lord did to him. It says, and the Lord smote the three divisions that were there, and he punished them according to their works and designs. It says, those who said, we will ascend to heaven and serve our gods, became like apes and elephants. Okay, it says they became like apes and elephants. So what we're looking at here, of course, is genetics. So we're looking at it looks like here, those who said that they wanted to serve their gods, it says that they became like apes and elephants. So it appears here that in the Father's house of many mansions, if someone is being cast out during the great cleansing, and let me show you about that here. So this is the keys of Enoch here, and this is what it says. It says, and it was explained to me how the higher planes would be called first before the throne to give account on how they use their energies of life. So you have, how you want to think about this is you have various different planes of existence, right? You have the very lowest plane, far removed from the Godhead, and then you have these higher planes, right? So here is talking about that those who are of the imperfect light are what? Cast out from the midst of the thrones into the lower heavens, causing great imbalance in the lower heavens. So remember here, those who are not using their light correctly, it appears that since everything is a continuation anyway, and that's the reason why it's important that you learn about reincarnation. Okay, so over here, when we look at the book of Jasher, it's talking about those who were saying that they wanted to do their own thing. It says they became like apes and elephants. So we have to look at the characteristic traits of an ape and the characteristic traits of an elephant. Okay, so if you look up like an apes, or like what, clumsy, their hair is not, they have like fur and it's straight, right? They don't have that coily texture typically, and you see like maybe no lip, like the top lip is missing, and then we have like big ears and things of that nature. And then it says like elephants, and then you're dealing with like maybe no teeth, big ears, maybe the inability to properly grow hair and stuff like that. So it looks like it's dealing with genetics here. It says, and those who said, we will smite the heaven with arrows, it says the Lord killed them, one man through the hand of his neighbor. And the third divisions of those who said, we will ascend to heaven and fight against him, the Lord scattered them throughout the earth, and they became like what? Apes and elephants. So they're scattered across the earth in the lower planes of existence, and they became like apes and elephants there. So we're really dealing with genetics here, it looks like. Going back over here to the keys of Enoch, it says those who are of the imperfect light are cast out, right? Then it says, this is the beginning of the great what? House cleansing, which shall be extended to all realms of the Father's house of many mansions, and shall displace the false spiritual authorities from the higher heavens to the regions of what? Planetary creation. That's what it's saying here in the keys of Enoch here. So that kind of gives you a more of a esoteric view of what it's talking about in the book of Jasher when it's dealing with this Tower of Babel. Because if you think about it, you're talking about everyone having one language, meaning they have one doctrine. Okay, so when in 2 Thessalonians, it actually talks about how I will send you the strong delusion that you should believe a lie. So when the language was confounded, you're really talking about doctrines being sent in and confounding the information and breaking it all up. and then you have people running this way and people running that way. And that's kind of like what's happened. Remember, in the ancient texts, in the scriptures, it says knowledge will be increased, and what? People will run what? To and fro. So that's an example of what happened when the languages was confounded and everybody just was running to and fro. So it's talking about some information that was sent in, a strong delusion that was sent in, that scattered everybody. And genetically speaking, those who were disagreeable became like, it looks like apes and elephants here. That's what it's saying. So I want to introduce text here to you. This is the Book of Truth, the Voice of Osiris, because what we're talking about is how the earth has heavens. Okay, so here, this is what it's saying here in chapter 1. It says, God the Son doth make up the Trinity of the three perfect beings, right? It says the source of universal life doth dwell in what? Divine heaven. Think not of divine heaven as the heaven referred to in your book called what? The Holy Bible. Nay, there is the heaven of the divine spheres, the heaven of the semi-divine spheres, okay, and also the heaven of the what? Material worlds, plural. Material worlds, plural. So that should help you in understanding what we're talking about here, and how you need to kind of like open your viewpoint to know that there are many worlds. Hebrews 1 and 2 says, by whom he made the worlds. So what we're dealing with is the Father's house of many mansions here. Here's another text here that I want to introduce you to. This is called the Ladder of Lights, and I'll leave all these resources underneath the like button for you. Now in here, it kind of goes over these particular kind of worlds. So then here it says you have something called the physical world, which is Asaya. And then the next you have what's called the mental world, which is Yetzirah. And then you have the spirit world, which is Absolute, right? And so forth. You have the soul world, which is Braya. And then you have the spirit world, which is Absolute. So that kind of gives you an idea of what we're dealing with in terms of worlds, to try to help with your consciousness level on being aware of what's happening. So then when you look at the book of Daniel chapter 2, when it's talking about this vision of this image of a head of gold, you really want to kind of look at that as being worlds, and how there are those that are operating on those particular planes. One is higher than the other, and then they're above the material planes, and the material planes will be considered the iron. And then you have those who are made of clay, who are there in those material planes of existence. And then it's talking about how the iron is mixed with the clay, and how it also mentions that there's these particular ones that have been cast out of other worlds that are trying to mix their seed with the children of men. But as iron doesn't mix with clay, it's just the same way that clay doesn't, you don't find that in iron, so they're having a hard time doing so. So we're really dealing with genetics when we're talking about that, but at this and basically an infiltration of trying to hack codes to be habitable on different planes of existence. But that gives you another way to look at that image. Most people talk about these empires, but that's a very low level way of looking at it. But if you are able to piece this information together, then that should give you an idea of what we're dealing with. I just wanted to do an introduction. Hopefully you took some notes. If you have to stop the video, go back. I'll leave, like I said, all the resources for you, but I wanted to just introduce some information to you so you can go the rest of the way in your studies on this thing, okay? So what we brought out is we gave more information on what happened with these garments, like coats of skin were made for Adam and Eve, so to speak, and those coats of skin were passed down. Do you get what I'm saying? Coats of skin were passed down. And then they were brought onto the ark with Noah, and they were taken from him by Ham, and Ham actually gave them to Cush, and Cush actually gave them to Nimrod. Nimrod became mighty. Another thing to add is also says in the book of Jasher that actually Esau killed Nimrod. So then when you hear the story about Esau coming from the field being faint, and Jacob having his lentil soup and so forth, and how, you know, he basically said, hey, I'll take that type thing, you know, and I'll sell you my birthright for it. So that's where he was coming from, is killing Nimrod, because of the struggle that was taking place there. And then you'll get that in the book of Jasher also. So then obviously we have the situation with the Tower of Babel, and how that is about language, and it's about knowledge, it's about doctrines, and they had all one information, and then they decided that they was trying to dethrone some other information, and then based upon that not being allowed, then they smoked them in 3 divisions. Some became like apes and elephants, genetically speaking. Some basically left the body, and then we related that to the image, and how that's really what we're talking about, is different worlds in the Father's house of many mansions, and how those are being cast out who have become disagreeable. So you're either agreeable or disagreeable, if that makes sense. So I'll expound on this in another video. I just want to kind of introduce that to you, and see if you have any questions or comments about what I brought out here. Please leave that in the comment section underneath the like button, and I'll see you in the next video.